Hello, I'm Dr. William Loveless, marriage and family therapist, host of Concept, welcoming you to our show. Today we're going to talk about marriage burnout. Now, burnout is a familiar term. We've talked about that on this program before, but today we want to take the concepts of burnout, which is unexplained to many people. They say, I'm tired all the time and I must be burned out. What we've discovered is that people who burn out have very unrealistic expectations for themselves. They're set by themselves, or maybe they accept the expectations that someone else offers and internalize them and make them their own and think it's their own. Marriage burnout runs pretty much the same way. People come to me all the time saying, I'm falling out of love, Dr. Loveless. I don't want to go on. My marriage is burned out. I'm burned out. I'm tired of it. I would like to end it and go on with my life. One of the things that we must understand is that the pressures of modern marriage, the expectations of modern marriage, they come to us in such a fashion that great pressure is placed on husband, wife, and on the children. These pressures or expectations are very, very intense and have a lot to do with the changes that have taken place in American culture. So it's no surprise that expectations, high expectations for marriage, cause marriage burnout. When we say marriage burnout, we are simply saying people have come to the point where the marriage itself to them seems tired, where they have withdrawn from each other into kind of a quiet solitude, an armed peace in some situations, an armed war in other situations, where it seems hopeless to them, where they've withdrawn, where they don't see any need of going on. When we find a situation like this, we find marriage burnout, and it's treatable, just like burnout in our jobs is treatable. We first have to recognize that it will always come to us when we have unrealistic expectations. When we say, when we get married, this and this is going to happen, and when it doesn't happen, and we struggle with trying to make it happen, and finally get very disappointed and say, my partner will never change, I will never change, it takes too long for us to change, we're out of here. Now that happens to a lot of people. It's tragic because it doesn't have to happen, and if it happens, it's very treatable. Now look at some of the causes, look at some of the things that are happening in our culture that contribute to this situation. Look, for instance, at the unrealistic way we look at romance many times, based on movies from the professional movie makers, based on stories in magazines and all kinds of books that are being published about how to find the true romance in your marriage, and painting wonderful pictures of dinner out and no problems at home. The unrealistic, romantic model of marriage causes a lot of people to have a very unreal picture of what's actually going to happen, because we know, without question, that the most notoriously dishonest time in our lives is during courtship. We try to present the very best possible picture of ourselves during courtship. We spend a lot of time with our friend. We promise all kinds of things, and we think that these same behaviors and these same feelings are going to continue on after the wedding. Well, I have news. They won't. And with that comes a smashing of all of the expectations. Then it's time to sit down and take a look at realistic expectations about what marriage is, not based on the dreams of the past, not based on the fantasies of courtship, or on the pictures given in magazine, books, and movies about marriage, but real marriage. Another stress that always comes in marriage and leads to marriage burnout is the presence of children. I like to say, the patter of little feet in the house makes the temples pound. That is to say, children are wonderful, but there is no more stressor in marriage than children. If I see problems in marriages, and I see them every day in my office, I am seeing two people who cannot agree on the management of the kids. So children are a blessing. Children are a wonderful event to take place in the life of every marriage. But they are major stressors. Finances, and that's related very carefully to two-job situations. Most families today wish they had more money. The best way to get more money is to take a second job. Husband and wife both work. Sometimes maybe both of them take part-time second jobs. You add the loss of finance with the addition of two jobs or more in a family, and you have an additional stressor. You simply cannot have this kind of combination without having stress. What does it do? Well, it takes people away from each other. Many times they might be on different shifts. One will be on a day shift, one will be on a night shift. So this becomes an important situation. We never have time to sit down and talk, they say. And when we sit down and talk, we're too tired. So tiredness becomes a problem when both are working and both have a home to take care of. Then the problems emerge of who's going to take care of the house, who's going to take care of this. Sometimes the wife might say to the husband, you know, you're here, but I get the feeling you're not here. You're somewhere else. You don't seem to be plugged in here. Or the husband may say to the wife, you don't seem to be plugged in here. Your mind seems, are you thinking of someone else? When people are tired, when they're working to kind of make ends meet, when they're working to get ahead in life, and they don't have time to sit down and talk, when they don't have time to do things they enjoy together, when they don't have time to experience these very significant things in any relationship, we're looking at marriage burnout. Unrealistic expectations of what they are supposed to get from each other, based many times on their own home. Well, my father did this. Here's what happened in our home. My mother did this. My father ran the money, my mother ran the money, my mother did the housework, my father did the cooking, who did the cars, who did the lawn, who did the yard, who did all of the things that every house has to do. When these arguments and these discussions come up and there is no solution, we end up in a standoff, and marriage burnout is soon to come. For instance, who should mow the lawn, or do the dishes, or the housework? Now, these are questions which modern families grapple with all of the time. If dad is away working full-time and mother is not working at all, should she do all of the housework and all of the cooking and all of the yard and everything else? What if both sides are working, mom and dad, and there are children? Who takes care of the children when they are young? Who takes care of them when they're older? Who takes care of them after school? Who takes care of the house and the yard in that situation? We have a number of issues here to discuss, and the roles of males and females have changed in our culture and have also contributed to burnout, to marriage burnout, and to personal burnout. Now, the cure for marriage burnout is the same cure that we discuss when we talk about people who are burned out on the job or burned out in whatever situation they're in. Cures fall into major categories. Separation, distance is the curse that brings about burnout. Accepting unrealistic expectations from other people, or making unrealistic expectations for ourselves and internalizing them, so we expect that we're going to be productive of this. For instance, dad has always thought, husband has always thought, that he would be making enough money to take care of the family without his wife having to work, so she could stay home and be a mother to the children that he wants to have and provide for. He goes out in the job market and he discovers that the most he can possibly make with the training he has is $35,000 a year. that's not enough to make all the payments for the house and for the car and for everything that he has always envisioned that he would be able to provide for his family. And so he has a choice. Shall I get 2 jobs and never be home to talk, to listen, and to touch my wife? Then I can make enough to provide her with a home to play house in, with the children, but I won't be there. Or shall she go to work and the 2 of us work? Then how are we going to take care of the children? And so we have these realistic or unrealistic expectations. There's a gap between what's possible and what's actually happening. And how we manage that gap in marriage, those expectations, has everything to do with our pulling out on each other, with our getting quiet and withdrawn and discouraged and depressed about the situation, or dealing with it. So distance, separation, isolation from each other, as well as accepting these external, other-directed expectations that come. And so, as I say, the cure is to turn that around and say, take care of that distance by closeness. What do we mean by closeness in marriage? When I know what you think and what you feel, and you know what I think and what I feel, and neither of us has a need to change the other, it can be said we are close. It can be said we are intimate. That's what we mean by intimacy. A lot has been made of intimacy in our culture today, and it's an important ingredient in every relationship. Every relationship needs closeness, and every relationship needs some private time together. The cure for marriage burnout, as we have described it today, starts with closeness, which means talking together. Well, what kind of talk? Some kind of talk is good, some kind of talk might not be so hot, so we need to define what kind of talk we mean. The most important kind of talk to take care of marriage burnout is the talk that comes in the line of "I appreciate." And so I would suggest you start with that. Try to stay away from the generalities. Try to stay away from the words like "I appreciate your kindness," or "I appreciate your generosity," or whatever that might be. Important as those characteristics are, the crucial thing to zero in on is the little things. Dear, I appreciate the fact that you picked up your socks today. I appreciate the fact that you got the car washed. These are measurable behaviors that happened today or yesterday or this week. I would suggest that that's the kind of talk we need to increase in our marriages. Even possibly getting a notebook, and every day for a few days write down the things you appreciate in your spouse, in your husband or in your wife. I appreciate it, and write down these little measurable behaviors that you've never maybe taken the time to notice, or that you haven't taken the time to write down. And when he comes home or when she comes home this evening, whip out your piece of paper. Maybe you did it at the office and bring it with you. Whatever the situation is, sit down and read it to each other without comment. It would be a wonderful way. That's the kind of talk that helps us take care of this distance that separates us in marriage burnout. A second suggestion in terms of what to talk about is "I need from you." Most of us feel in marriage, for instance, that we just kind of automatically assume we know what each other needs. Well, I know what my wife needs. I take care of it. My husband knows what I need. Oh, really? When's the last time you asked for what you need? Clearly, unambiguously, no questions, just, "Dear, here's what I need from you." We kind of assume that we know, when I hold, in fact, we really don't know. So a second kind of talk, and you might write it down, and your list won't be very long. I need from you to clean out the garage, to do the dishes, to mow the lawn, to spend more time with me, to talk to me more. Once we find out what people want, we have something to work with. If a wife says to a husband, I need more time with you, how much more time? What time of the day, what time of the week? Shall we set up a time to be together? Now that sounds mechanistic, it sounds kind of contrived and highly structured. Much of the time we go through a highly structured life. We are told what time to be to work. We have a rough idea what time we have to be to school. We have to be at the desk or out in the field or whatever we're doing in our work at a certain time, and we're told, here's the time when you get off. So we live in a fairly structured life. It's very helpful for us to structure our relationships as well. So if we're reading to our spouses and to our husbands, I appreciate in you this list of things, and they sit and are showered with all of these nice things that they're hearing that we appreciate. And then they read their list back to us if they're willing to do that. We're much more able then to accept the situation when we say, here's what I need from you. Specifically, what do I need? And it might get very mechanistic. It might get very structured for a while as we discuss what we need. This is the kind of talk. Remember, closeness means talking, listening, and touching. Talking, I appreciate, I need. Listening, I'm here. Talk to me. I would like to hear what you have to say. I am listening. Not only to the words you speak, but I am listening also to the meaning behind these words. In my office and in my practice, I have a number of ways in which I help people learn how to listen to each other. Very important skill in dealing with marriage burnout. People can come together and find new thrills, new highs, if you please, in listening to each other. And the last skill of closeness, touching. Everybody needs to be held. Everybody needs to be kissed. Everybody needs to be touched. This is an important part of everyday life. Unrealistic expectations are very much a part of marriage burnout. That is to say, when you come into a relationship, what are you expecting to happen there? Most people in early marriage expect courtship behavior to continue. But look realistically at it for a moment. You're spending way too much time with each other to get a job done, to have enough time to sleep. In fact, in my office, I often talk to people who are in courtship, and one of the things they say to me is, whew, we're tired. We need to get some rest. We're spending too much time together. And that's a courtship behavior, spending a lot of time together. I go to a college or a university campus, oftentimes where I teach, and you'll find couples together in the library every night studying. They eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. After the library, they spend some time together. Once people get married, this kind of behavior has to stop. Somebody has to work for a living. Somebody has to spend time doing something beside being pleasantly together. So the expectations that oftentimes come during marriage are broken, and those unrealistic expectations kind of take over. Now, I hope you can agree with some of the things I'm going to say now, because they're true, but many newlyweds and many couples that are dating each other have a hard time accepting them. Unrealistic expectations. What are they when we talk about marriage burnout? Unrealistic expectations of marriage are, number one, that you will never be lonely again. Ah, finally, I have someone that's going to take care of me. I will never be lonely again. Wrong. You will be lonely. There is that existential loneliness, that human condition that affects all of us. And there are times when you have sat in a large crowd of people in church or in a concert and been very lonely. You know what I mean? Those moments never pass away. Marriage does not solve loneliness. I know lots of married couples, many of them have been married many years, who have discovered that marriage can be a very lonely situation. Unrealistic expectation number 2. My spouse will never be attracted to anyone else. Wrong. Your spouse and you will be attracted to other people during the course of the marriage. To expect that not to happen, as I have said, is to expect a very unrealistic expectation of your spouse. What should you do about that? Well, you need to be negotiating that, going in. Is it okay for me to go to lunch with someone of the opposite sex that I work with in the office? Just the two of us? Do we take separate vacations ever with anyone? There's a whole list of issues that need to be talked about when we talk about our relationships to other people. Oftentimes these aren't talked about until after the fact. Remember what I said. Number 2, my spouse nor I will never be attracted to anyone else is an unrealistic expectation. So deal with that expectation early. Unrealistic expectation number 3. My spouse belongs to me. Wrong. Your spouse belongs to him or herself, not to you. Now, there are some cultures in the world where it appears that the spouse might seem to belong to the other. That's not the case in America. It's not the case in the United States. Certainly in our culture today, we say that we belong to ourselves. We are partners, but we are ourselves. We stay ourselves. We stay our personalities all our lives. Unrealistic expectation number 4. Jealousy means I care. Wrong. Jealousy means you're sick. That's what jealousy means. Jealousy means I'm insecure. I don't trust myself. I don't think I'm attractive. I don't think I have any holding power. I don't think my spouse really loves me. I have to check on her. I have to call on him. I have to be there when they're off work. I have to know where they are every minute of the day. That doesn't mean you care. That means you're sick. It's an unrealistic expectation to say that jealousy means I care. Now, those are the unrealistic, and there are many, many others. We don't have time on this program to talk about them all, but if you keep watching Concept, we'll be talking about them all in time. So stay tuned. Now, those are the unrealistic expectations. What about the realistic expectations? Those are what can I expect when I come into marriage? So I don't come in with this glittery view that's built on a romantic idea of marriage which never exists in anybody's head except in the unreality of a fiction writer. What do I have a right to expect? Number 1, you have a right to expect that in marriage you will change and your spouse will change. That change will be an ongoing situation. This we want to have happen. Imagine that my hand is your personality, and my other hand is your spouse's personality, and the fingers go all the way around the hand. So there are 20 fingers here instead of 5. And these fingers represent abilities, interests, capabilities, and personality traits. The hand is the personality, the core personality of you. That's you, who you are. And these fingers represent your traits and abilities and all of the things that make you you. In marriage, we agree to come together and we interlock. Our abilities seem to match. We like what we're matching with. It feels good and natural, and so we kind of join up. Unfortunately, in many cases, couples get stuck there. We want to be able to unstick and move around and plug in here. Change will take place all during our life. Realistic expectation number 2. The goal of the relationship is the relationship itself, not children, not houses, not cars, not possessions. They are always secondary. The relationship of the two parents, the relationship of the husband and wife, is more important than any other relationships, including the relationships to the children. Realistic expectation number 3. Pay attention closely. Realistic expectation number 3. You are responsible for yourself, not for anyone else. You're not in the wife changing or the husband changing business. You can't do it anyway. Don't try. It's their responsibility to change themselves. Marriage burnout is curable when we have realistic expectations, when we are working together to come close, to talk and to touch and to listen. This can happen. Closeness can take place, again, after long years of isolation. I would like to send you my famous 50 questions. It'll give you something to talk about, something to listen to for a long time. These questions deal with everything married couples ought to know about each other before they get married and afterwards. It gives you plenty of material to talk about, with instructions on the intentional relationship model that I talked about earlier in this program. I need from you, and I appreciate in you, if you would like to receive, without charge, no obligation now or later, a copy of Bill Loveless's famous 50 questions, write to me at Concept, Box 7120, Loma Linda, California, zip 92354. Ask for program number 22, Marriage Burnout, and we will be happy to mail you without obligation now or later a copy of the 50 questions toward an intentional marriage relationship.